You are not working, you're 56 years of age, you are a retired accountant with no political affiliation. So what do you feel about where we are without a Prime Minister at the moment?
I think it's an abdication of responsibility to have Parliament out at this time when we have such a crisis in the country, although crisis, I think, is perhaps a word that we bandy around a little too much.
Christine, you know, obviously there's been this ongoing leadership contest, and as you say, this crisis that really needs urgent attention. Do you have any inclination towards either of those who are in the contest? Do you prefer one over the other? And, you know, who's appealing to you the most?
If I'm perfectly honest, neither of them. I am very disappointed that in my opinion, the mainstream media have managed to remove a sitting Prime Minister from office. It should go to the country to determine whether we want either of them as leader. I'm quite surprised with Liz Truss's policies, or the policies and things she's hoping to bring in, given she is a qualified accountant. I'm not entirely sure that some of the things that she says are going to hold water. I don't see how we can have tax cuts when we spent so much money during COVID. We are now dealing with the aftermath of having so much more money in the system. We're also dealing with the aftermath of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I'm sure we all support that that should not have happened, but there are consequences. And the consequences are that we are seeing costs rise, and we're having to suffer the increasing costs. It's not just the fact that the gas supply from Russia has stopped. Prices of gas and oil had gone up prior to that and have actually gone up 200% on the markets in the last couple of years. But this is unsustainable. I was looking at my own finances, and for last year, it was just under £1,000 for gas and electricity, including the standing charge. Based on current prices without the October increase, my costs for this year, based on the same usage, are up at £2,000. Now, we cannot continue to see these prices going up, but I honestly don't know what the solution is, because the markets are driving the prices.
Started to talk personally and how it would affect you, because we all know the problems. Nobody knows what the blooming solution's going to be. Goldman Sachs.
No, that's right.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs is saying inflation next year could be 20% in this country, and you're talking about an energy bill of £2,000. I would say to you, Christine, you'll be lucky. You'll be lucky if it's only £2,000, and that means we've all got to waken up as to what we're going to do. Now, Isabel and I were talking about this before we came on air. And the thing is, a lot of people of today's generation, they're not prepared to tighten their belts. They're not prepared to make sacrifices. Those of us who are older remember hard times during the 70s. We remember industrial action, 3-day weeks, fuel shortages, all sorts of things when we didn't have central heating, we didn't have double glazing, we didn't have inside loos, all sorts of things like this. What are you prepared to do, Christine? Could you see yourself turning your heat off and sitting there in an outdoor coat, watching television or listening to the radio?
Well, it's interesting you say about the 70s. I was recounting with my husband. I remember sitting in the kitchen with my parents with one of those little gas camping lamps on, because the electricity was off yet again. But, you know, we managed. I will try and turn our electricity down a little, our gas down a little. We operate on 19 degrees centigrade in our house. A lot of people have their heating up a lot higher than that, and it's actually wastage. We don't need it. We should be putting an extra fleece on or an extra jumper on, or just getting up and walking around a little and not just sitting on our bottoms. It was interesting that one of the billing suppliers said several months ago that people ought to turn the heating down a notch and maybe put something else on. And they were pilloried for that, and they had to issue an apology. And we have become a very apologetic society. If anybody says anything wrong, the first thing they do is backtrack and apologise. And that's what makes us fairly useless in circumstances like this. Because you're right, we can't cope. We're not prepared to give anything up. Our expectations are too high of what society ought to provide us with. I've worked hard throughout my life, as have many other people, and because we are living off my husband's pension, we got nothing from COVID. We'll get £400 off our bill. Those people who have unions acting on their behalf, and I understand what they're doing and why. However, those who haven't got unions, how are they going to manage? How are they going to get their income up? We have pensioners where the triple lock was taken away. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing when it was in. People said it was too generous. I don't know. But when you have inflation that's running at RPI beyond 12-13%, and as you say, perhaps up to 18-20, something has to be done, and someone needs to think outside of the box. That's a phrase I'm not a great fan of, but something different needs to be done.
Something
if we take Ukraine and sanctions, we've put sanctions on Ukraine, but we're still paying international aid to countries who are continuing to take gas and oil supplies from Ukraine at a cheaper cost than we can get gas and oil. So our citizens are affected, but we're still paying out international aid. India is a good example. Now, I know there are trade deals and trade-offs, but can we not temporarily suspend that and use that money to help to support people who need that support in this country?
That's thinking outside the box, isn't it?
I'm all for, support of people who are affected by those awful floods in Pakistan or the drought in Africa and Somalia or whatever it is. But, goodness me, some of this foreign aid budget, absolute nonsense. And, we should be giving it. Our own people need help. And Christine, thank you so much indeed. I think you just highlighted, I think you speak for a lot of people, Christine, who basically think people like yourself and your husband who follow the rules, who've tried to do the right thing, are the ones who will be punished most, because you'll not get those who shout the loudest will always be listened to. So
absolutely. Yes.
Well, thank you for that.
May I just add one thing?
Yeah.
I hadn't realised it was the anniversary of Diana's death today, and I can vividly remember waking up on that morning to hear the news, which was incredibly shocking. But I also used to live across in the southeast, and I was at the M1 when her funeral procession went up the motorway to her brother's to be laid to rest. And I can quite vividly remember that day. It was an incredible scene and so quiet, and to see all the cars stopped on the motorway as the cavalcade went past. But it is quite incredible. It's 25 years.
It is
unbelievable.
Incredible.